Hey everyone, this is David March.
Hey everyone, this is Dan Counts.
Yeah, we're here to talk to you about how you can network more effectively for your ideal career and your dream position.
Right.
And so today we have a couple ideas that we're going to share with you. First one is going to be on networking in general. So the question that is proposed is, what are the misconceptions of networking? You want to go first, Dan?
Yeah, I'd love to. I work with a lot of clients in the IT space, and as you may know, IT people tend to be introverts. So networking is not doesn't come as natural, as it does to some people. But what I find, and you may find this to be true too, is that so many people will connect on LinkedIn and they think they've networked. And then the question becomes, how do you continue to foster that relationship? What's your experience been, Dave?
Yeah, 100%. You send a connection request, they're in there, great. That's like you don't take the step forward after that. The challenge is sometimes, so what do I say, or I don't really know how to get to the next step, next level. It's usually about finding a common interest, finding a common bond, something that you're both doing. So I also work with people with technology. Let's say we're working with someone like data science. You connect with someone in data science, and think that one of the kind of good things to start off with is maybe a common problem. There might be a competition that you see that they're in, and in this competition, there's a really challenging problem, but data science. And so asking him, hey, I'm working on this competition right now, and we're looking to help someone. I'm working on this competition right now, and I'm looking to solve this problem with natural language processing or something very specific to the industry. And could you help me along in solving it?
Yeah, I mean, you touch on an interesting point, and that's another misconception that we should talk about too. Is folks reach out to network, and mostly they're thinking about what they can get, and I find it's more powerful to come to a networking meeting, if you will, just a 20-minute meeting with somebody new about what can you give to them. You kind of got to think in terms of what can I give to hopefully receive something in the future, right? Because the person you're networking with is taking time for you, right? They got a busy day. So what are some of the things that you have found, like what you're talking about, that can continue to open up that relationship to where it becomes more trusting of this person that does have a genuine interest in being a part of my professional network?
Yeah, and so that's about kind of doing the research on what they're into, right? Because this is just an example, right? With competitions, I know there's one it's called Kaggle data science competition that people get into, but there's 100 different examples of this. It's could be something where they just started a new position, and maybe they just want someone to kind of talk to you about that new position. Maybe things aren't really ironing out as much, and it's good, just the value of having someone outside of their group, outside of the company, to talk about things could be a lot helpful too. So having some kind of value to bring, and that could be in a lot of different directions. It's just a matter of taking the action, right? And so I think that's a big piece.
Big step.
So the next topic we're going to talk about here today is, who should you target?
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, you can network with anyone, but what is the value to the person that you're networking with? So what have you shared with your clients as a great tactic and plan to target the right individuals that will benefit from the relationship?
So, when looking at what type of position you want to get, and when looking at the type of position that you like, you typically want to target the hiring managers and recruiters for that role. The simplest way is to go onto LinkedIn, go into the company, find the people section, look through who's in talent acquisition, who's in hire, who's in the talent acquisition, or in the engineering or data science department. Find the right person, and then there's a lot of people out there talking about cold outreach, getting email addresses,
That's a big one.
and from there, kind of doing cold email and sparking some interest from there. Messaging the type of position that they're interested in, and your resume.
With my clients, when I say it's important to kind of tap into that hidden job market, reach out directly to those potential hiring managers. And the first question that always comes up is, well, why would they want to connect with me? Why would they want to take the time? Why would the CTO or VP of IT, why would they want to take a moment to speak with me? And what I find is that, one, they're interested in expanding their network just as much as you're interested in expanding your network. The other thing too is, if you can actually, land in their lap as a potential candidate for something that they have either now that's open or in the near future, you just save them a lot of time because they didn't have to go find you. And for senior level candidates, think about the cost of recruiting, which can be 25, 33% of the base year's salary plus bonus if it's retained. That could be $100,000 you're saving them out of their budget, right? Yeah. And then the other thing too is, and I know you know this as well as I do because you've been recruiting as well, candidates that are referred into the company by somebody of authority always are looked at first than the cold applications coming off the internet.
Sure. Yeah, that recommendation is such a powerful thing. And when you think about it in terms of recruiting, essentially that is the thing that they're paying for, right? So if you're like a recruiter, you have a good relationship with a particular hiring manager, what they're paying for essentially is your recommendation. So
that's right.
Recommendations, if it's coming from a recruiter that has a strong, solid relationship and has done a lot of recruiting for that particular company before, or recommendation coming from the direct hiring manager or one of the associates to the decision maker, that's going to be pretty powerful as well.
Yeah, I mean, hiring managers like known quantities, right? So if you're an IT professional, data science person, sales marketing person, if somebody knows you and can say, yeah, this person can do the job, or more importantly, they've been around this horn before, then they become more of a sure bet, right? Than somebody cold off the internet that we don't know anything about, right? And you enter the organization at a different level. You already have a certain level of stature to start a conversation about a role in the company, without having to try to get up to I have to redo that line, but without having to convince or qualify yourself on into the organization. I don't know if that makes sense. So once you have a meeting scheduled with somebody for the very first time, it's important to not only control the timeline, say 20 minutes, because you don't want to spend a lot of time outside of the topics that you want to discuss. But what kind of research can people do up front to have a good sense of who they're going to talk to and what they might be interested in?
Yeah, I mean, definitely looking at their profile is going to be important, and understanding more about what they're doing, what they're interested in, and what they've been up to is really important. And I think what that does is kind of tailor your story to what they've been through. So, if you're, when I network with people, I usually talk about my story in the beginning, and then, try to tie in different pieces about what's going on in my story and what I've learned about them. That way, we have a common ground, we have a common common feeling of I guess trust,
Right.
And so that really is what I think the research and planning section is about, is to essentially establish some kind of common ground with them and establish some trust or some likeness.
That brings up an interesting point, about your initial introduction of what your background is. And I coach my clients to really focus on a very short introduction of who and what they do, and maybe a couple of career highlights, right? Like, hey, I'm Dan Counts. I coach, IT executives in transition. A couple of career highlights includes, boom, 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 with a couple of measuring sticks, and then get into, the conversation, and try to do that like in 30 seconds or less. Right? Nobody wants to hear about your long background from kindergarten and how you got to the position you are now, right? They want to know, what can you do forward? What have you done? What are the resolutions you've created? What is the value that you've brought to your last employer? And what's the value that you can bring to me as a member of my professional network, right?
Totally. So yeah, that's a big piece. And, that essentially, again, I think it's about also building rapport. That builds rapport with the individual. And sometimes I don't fit in the 30 seconds to a minute intro. Sometimes I go for a little bit of a longer story, just to really communicate the journey. I mean, it depends on how many years of experience you have, but if there's a particular point in your journey which is like really powerful, I think it should be spoken.
Yeah, it's relevant to the conversation.
Yeah, it's relevant to the conversation. Yeah. I mean, I think that the problem comes in when you put too much context, right? That's usually the problem.
Yeah.
If you just start talking about like, oh, and then my wife died, and then and then my husband came from this restaurant, and just like what's going on in this conversation? We went from someone dying in your family to meeting your new husband. I thought we were talking about a career. What
Right.
what are we talking about?
Right. Yeah.
So
I always tell people, less is better.
yeah.
Right? I mean, think about a networking meeting. You have maybe 20, 30 minutes of this person's time. So, getting into the weeds on something that's completely irrelevant could do damage to the relationship that you're trying to build.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. If you have as I said, if you're doing the research and planning of the person and you have a story that really resonates with them and it takes a little bit longer, I think it's going to make more of a meaningful connection to them. And people, they always say, people may not remember what you say, but they remember how you made them feel.
Yeah. And you're really kind of touching upon the lines of, executive presence, right? The words you use and how you say them. Because the art with a good networking meeting is leaving a good, solid, genuine, positive, professional impression. Of what you do. Yeah.
So
cool. Let's move on to the next question. We got meeting prep here. Different than research and planning. So I think we're talking about like researching the company, who you're meeting with, duration.
Yeah, I don't know if we're gonna do that one. That feels like it's a little.
We kind of covered that, right?
Yeah, we covered that.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about why would they connect with you. So a couple of things that when you're having a networking meeting that I find that are really powerful that you want to leave the meeting with is two things. One, you want to make sure that you ask them, what can I do for you? You remember at the beginning, we talked about this as a bi-directional conversation and thinking in terms of what you can give that person. So when you think about what can you do for that person, it's important to ask, what can I do for you? That'd be the first thing when you're closing out these meetings. And the second thing to think about too is, what about a next step? So with my networking meetings with my executives, I always say, hey, this has been an exciting conversation. Really appreciate all your time. Let's throw something on the calendar for about a month or two out and catch up again. And 99% of the people will say, yeah, that's a great idea.